Number 1. Glenn Miller. We begin with a mystery that isn't just a cold case, it is a ghost story that hangs over the history of music itself. Imagine a star so massive that he didn't just sell records, he provided the soundtrack for the entire free world during its darkest hour. In the 1940s, Glenn Miller was not just a band leader, he was the heartbeat of the greatest generation. His songs like In the Mood and Moonlight Serenade were the anthems that soldiers hummed in the trenches and sweethearts danced to while waiting for the war to end. He was the biggest pop star on the planet, a man who gave up a fortune to join the army and boost morale. But on a cold, foggy afternoon in December 1944, the music stopped forever. We are investigating the 10 most haunting cases of music legends who vanished into thin air and were never found. If you believe that these lost icons deserve to be remembered and that their mysteries deserve to be solved, please subscribe to this channel right now. And if the nostalgia of the big band era touches your heart, hit the like button to help us keep these memories alive. The disappearance of Glenn Miller is the ultimate wartime tragedy. On December 15, 1944, Miller was scheduled to fly from the United Kingdom to Paris to prepare for a Christmas concert for the troops who had just liberated France. The weather was atrocious, a thick, freezing fog that grounded almost every other flight. But Miller was impatient. He refused to let the soldiers down. Against advice, he boarded a small, single-engine UC-64 Northman aircraft at an airfield in Bedford. He famously joked to the pilot about the lack of parachutes, a haunting final comment. The plane took off into the gray soup of the English sky, heading out over the English Channel. It was never seen or heard from again. There was no distress call. There was no explosion seen from the shore. There was simply silence. The plane, the pilot, and the greatest band leader in the world vanished as if they had been erased from history. For decades, the world has asked, what happened? The theories are as heartbreaking as the loss itself. The official report blamed the weather, suggesting the carburetor iced up, causing the engine to stall and the plane to plummet into the icy waters. But a darker, more tragic theory emerged years later. Returning bomber crews reported jettisoning their unused bombs over the channel that very same afternoon to land safely. Some historians believe that Glenn Miller's tiny plane was accidentally struck by a falling bomb from a friendly aircraft, a tragic case of friendly fire that knocked the music out of the sky. No wreckage has ever been recovered, no body was ever found to be buried. The news of his disappearance wasn't released until Christmas Eve, casting a pall of grief over the holiday for millions. Glenn Miller went to play for the soldiers and became one of them, a casualty of war who has no grave. His music continued to play on radios across the world, a ghostly reminder of the man who flew into the fog and never came back. This mystery has endured for 80 years. Do you believe it was a tragic mechanical failure, or was he the accidental victim of the war he was trying to support? Let me know your thoughts on this heartbreaking loss in the comments below. If this emotional look into the day the music vanished moved you, please hit the like button, share this video with a history buff, and make sure you are subscribed for part 2, where we will jump to the 1990s to investigate the rock star who parked his car near a bridge and simply walked off the face of the earth.
Number 2. Richie Edwards. We move from the fog of World War II to the gritty, neon-soaked streets of London in the mid-1990s to explore the disappearance of a man who was the intellectual soul of British rock. Richey Edwards was the rhythm guitarist and primary lyricist for the Manic Street Preachers, but calling him a musician feels like an understatement. He was a poet, a philosopher, and a cultural icon who wore his heart and his pain on his sleeve. Quite literally, he was famous for carving the words "for real" into his own arm during an interview to prove his artistic integrity, a moment that cemented him as a tortured genius in the eyes of a generation. He was handsome, incredibly intelligent, and deeply troubled, often compared to Kurt Cobain. But unlike Cobain, whose tragic end was final and confirmed, Richie's story has no period, only a haunting question mark. On February 1, 1995, the day he was supposed to fly to the United States for a promotional tour that could have made the band global superstars, Richie Edwards simply checked out of reality. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. The timeline of his disappearance is a roadmap of despair and confusion. Richie checked out of the Embassy Hotel in London at 7 a.m. He didn't go to the airport. Instead, he drove his silver Vauxhall Cavalier back to his apartment in Cardiff, Wales. He left behind his passport, his credit cards, and his Prozac. This was the first sign that this wasn't a vacation. It was an escape from his own identity. For 2 weeks, he was a ghost. There were sightings of him at a bus station. A taxi driver claimed to have driven him around the Welsh valleys, but nothing was confirmed. Then, on Valentine's Day, February 14th, his car was found. It was parked at the Ost Services, right next to the Severn Bridge, a massive structure connecting England and Wales that is notoriously known as a suicide location. The discovery of the car should have been the end of the story, the final piece of a tragic puzzle pointing to a jump from the bridge. But the car told a different story. The battery was dead. Evidence inside suggested that Richie had been living in the vehicle for days after he disappeared. He hadn't driven there and jumped immediately. He had stayed there, existing in the limbo between his old life and whatever came next. This detail is what fuels the enduring mystery and the agony of his family. No body was ever found in the dangerous waters of the River Severn, despite extensive searches. Because of his intelligence and his obsession with literature about disappearing, many fans and theorists believe he staged his own death to escape the pressures of fame. They believe he walked away from the bridge, not off it. His bandmates were so devastated they continued to pay a quarter of their royalties into a trust fund for him for over a decade, keeping a microphone open for him on stage, refusing to believe he was gone. His sister Rachel has spent nearly 30 years fighting to keep the case open, criticizing the police for not checking CCTV footage or following up on leads. In 2008, he was officially declared presumed dead for legal reasons. But for those who loved him, there is no closure. He is the rock and roll phantom, the beautiful boy who walked out of a hotel and dissolved into the gray British sky. This case touches on a profound fear we all share, the idea of someone we love simply ceasing to exist. Do you believe Richie took his own life at the bridge, or did he successfully engineer the ultimate escape act to live a quiet life in obscurity? I want to hear your theory on this enduring rock mystery in the comments below. If this tragic and mysterious story of the lost poet of rock moved you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for part 3, where we will travel to the American desert to find a folk singer who vanished, leaving only his guitar behind.
Number 3. Jim Sullivan. We leave the gray skies of Britain and head to the vast, sun-baked emptiness of the American Southwest, to a stretch of desert highway where reality seems to shimmer and dissolve in the heat. This is the story of a folk singer who wrote his own ghost story years before he vanished. A man whose disappearance is so eerie and so perfectly aligned with his art that it feels less like a crime and more like a prophecy fulfilled. His name was Jim Sullivan. In the late 1960s and early 70s, he was a cult figure in the Los Angeles music scene. A tall, charismatic performer with a voice like gravel and honey, who hung out with movie stars but never quite caught his big break. He recorded an album in 1969 titled UFO, a collection of haunting, psychedelic folk songs that dealt with leaving his family, driving into the desert, and being taken away by aliens. At the time, it was just a record, a piece of vinyl that failed to chart. But 6 years later, those lyrics would read like a roadmap to his own oblivion. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. The mystery began in March 1975. Jim Sullivan had decided that Los Angeles had nothing left for him. He packed his Volkswagen Beetle with his clothes, his records, and his most prized possession, his 12-string guitar. He left his wife and son behind, promising to send for them once he had made it big in Nashville. He was driving alone across the country, a solitary figure chasing a neon dream on the asphalt ribbon of America. On March 5th, he was pulled over by a highway patrolman outside Santa Rosa, New Mexico, for swerving. He was sober, but reportedly exhausted. The officer told him to rest. Jim checked into the La Mesa motel, but reports suggest he didn't sleep. He bought vodka at a local store, he was seen wandering, and then, the next day, he simply evaporated. His car was found 26 miles away from the motel, abandoned on a remote ranch owned by a local family with alleged mafia connections. The car was unlocked. Inside were his wallet, his clothes, his tapes, and most chillingly, his 12-string guitar. For a musician, leaving your instrument behind is like leaving a part of your body. It is the one thing you would never abandon if you were planning to walk away. But Jim was gone. The search was extensive, combing the unforgiving desert scrub for any sign of the 6'2" singer, but the earth had swallowed him whole. Theories swirled immediately, ranging from the grounded to the supernatural. The local police suspected foul play, whispering that perhaps Jim had disrespected the wrong people at the ranch or stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see, leading to a quiet execution and a burial in the endless sands. Others suggested he had simply walked into the desert to end his life, driven by the despair of a stalled career. But the fans who rediscovered his music decades later point to the album UFO. The lyrics describe driving into the desert and looking at the lights in the sky, asking, "Did he tell you he came by a UFO?" It is a coincidence that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who listens to the record. This case is a true Rorschach test for what you believe about the world. Do you think Jim Sullivan fell victim to a very human crime in a lawless part of the desert, or do you believe, as his lyrics strangely predicted, that he found a different kind of exit? I want to hear your theory on this eerie disappearance in the comments below. Jim Sullivan's body was never found. His wife and son waited for a call that never came. Decades later, a record label re-released UFO, and Jim finally found the fame he had been driving toward. But he wasn't there to see it. He remains the ultimate desert ghost, a man who wrote the soundtrack to his own vanishing act. If this eerie story of the man who sang his own fate captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for part 4, where we will head to the open ocean to find an 80s rock star who was swept away by a freak wave.
Number 4. Scott Smith.
We leave the dusty highways of New Mexico and head to the cold, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific Ocean, to the waters off the coast of San Francisco, where nature proved that it does not care about platinum records or sold-out arenas. This is the terrifying story of Scott Smith, the bassist for the legendary Canadian rock band Loverboy. If you were alive in the 1980s, Scott Smith was part of the soundtrack of your life. He provided the driving low-end rhythm for anthems like Working for the Weekend and Turn Me Loose, songs that defined a decade of excess, joy, and red leather pants. By the year 2000, the height of the 80s mania had faded, but Scott was living the good life, enjoying the freedom that his success had bought him. He was an experienced sailor, a man who found peace on the open water, far away from the noise of the tour bus and the screaming fans. He owned a beautiful 11-meter sailboat named the Sea Major, a vessel that was supposed to be his sanctuary. But the ocean is a chaotic, unpredictable beast, and on a November afternoon, it decided to claim a rock star for itself. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories remind us of the terrifying fragility of life. If you believe that these legends deserve to be remembered, please subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you have ever felt the primal fear of the open ocean, hit the like button to support this deep dive. On November 30, 2000, Scott Smith set sail from San Francisco, heading south toward Mexico with 2 friends and his fiancée. It was supposed to be a dream trip, a leisurely cruise down the coast. The weather was rough, but not catastrophic. The waves were choppy, but the Sea Major was a sturdy boat, and Scott was a capable captain. They were about 4 miles off the coast near the Golden Gate Bridge, a place of breathtaking beauty and deadly currents. Scott was on deck, steering the boat, securing gear, doing the work he loved. His companions were below deck or in the cockpit, shielded from the spray. And then, without warning, the nightmare arrived. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't a hurricane. It was a phenomenon that sailors have whispered about for centuries, something that science has only recently begun to understand. A rogue wave. Out of the churning gray water, a wall of water estimated to be over 25 feet high rose up like a monster. It didn't build gradually. It simply appeared, a freak convergence of energy and current. It slammed into the Sea Major with the force of a freight train. The boat shuddered violently, tipping precariously on its side, nearly capsizing under the immense weight of the water. Inside the cabin, Scott's friends were thrown around like dolls. Chaos reigned for a few terrifying seconds as the boat righted itself, water draining from the decks. When they scrambled up to the deck to check on Scott, they expected to see him shaken, perhaps injured, but still there. They saw only an empty wheel. The deck was bare. The wave had not taken the boat. It had selectively, surgically taken Scott. He had been swept over the side, swallowed instantly by the cold, churning Pacific. The panic that followed is unimaginable. His fiancée and friends immediately turned the boat around, scanning the gray, heaving waves for a head, a hand, a life jacket. They issued a mayday call, screaming into the radio that a man was overboard. The Coast Guard responded with massive force. Helicopters, cutters, and private boats scoured the area. For hours they searched the freezing waters of the Red Triangle, an area notorious for sharks and treacherous currents. But the ocean is vast, and a human head in the water is a speck of dust in a hurricane. Despite the massive search effort, despite the fame of the victim, and despite the prayers of millions of fans, not a single trace of Scott Smith was ever found. No body, no clothing, nothing. He simply ceased to exist, taken by the water in a fraction of a second. He was declared lost at sea, a nautical term that carries a heavy, ghostly finality. The band Loverboy was devastated. They had lost their brother, their anchor. The idea that a man who had stood on stages in front of 50,000 people could just vanish into the water was a stark reminder of how small we truly are against the forces of nature. This case taps into a primal human fear, the fear of the deep, or thalassophobia. Do you believe that rogue waves are just freak accidents of nature, or is there something almost predatory about the way the ocean claims certain lives? I want to hear your thoughts on the mystery of the sea in the comments below. Scott Smith is technically missing, but the reality is accepted by all who knew him. He is part of the Pacific now. His disappearance marked the tragic end of the classic Loverboy lineup, leaving a silence in the rhythm section that can never be filled. He went out doing what he loved, but the suddenness of his departure serves as a terrifying memento mori. You can be working for the weekend 1 minute and gone the next. If this harrowing story of a rock star swallowed by the sea left you stunned, please hit the like button, share this video with anyone who loves 80s rock, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 5, where we will travel back to the 1970s to uncover the story of the first female singer-songwriter to vanish into thin air.
Number 5. Connie Converse. We move from the violent waves of the Pacific to the quiet, desperate humming of an engine on an open highway in 1974. This is the story of a disappearance that is less about a crime and more about a deliberate erasure, a vanishing act performed by a woman who was arguably the most important musician you have never heard of until it was too late. Her name was Connie Converse, and today she is revered as a pioneer, the woman who invented the modern singer-songwriter genre in 1950s New York City long before Bob Dylan or Joni Mitchell ever strummed a chord. She wrote songs of heartbreaking intimacy and wit, capturing the female experience with a rawness that was decades ahead of its time. But in the 1950s, the world wasn't ready for her. She was rejected, ignored, and eventually beaten down by an industry that didn't understand her genius. So, she packed up her guitar, left the city, and eventually, she packed up her life. This is the haunting mystery of the original Ghost of Folk, a woman who wrote her own goodbye song and then drove into the oblivion of the American landscape, never to be seen again. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. To understand the vanishing of Connie Converse, you have to feel the weight of her silence. By 1974, Connie was 50 years old. She was living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, working a regular job, her musical dreams long buried in a filing cabinet. She was battling profound depression and a sense of failure that was compounded by a medical need for a hysterectomy, a surgery that she felt stripped her of her identity. She felt like a burden, a ghost in her own life. In August of that year, just days after her 50th birthday, the pressure became too much. She didn't make a scene. She didn't scream. She wrote letters. She wrote a series of goodbye notes to her family and friends that are some of the most poignant and devastating documents in music history. In them, she wrote, "Let me go. Let me be if I can. Let me not be if I can't." It was a permission slip for her own disappearance, a plea for them not to look for her. She packed her Volkswagen Beetle with her clothes, her manuscripts, and her music. She didn't take much, just enough to exist, or perhaps enough to end her existence on her own terms. She drove away from her house, turned onto the highway, and simply drove off the map. That was 50 years ago. In the half-century since she put her car in gear, not a single trace of Connie Converse or her Volkswagen Beetle has ever been found. It is as if the earth opened up and swallowed her whole. Her family hired private investigators. They reached out to the police. They waited by the phone for a call that never came. The official theory is that she drove to a body of water or a secluded forest and took her own life.
fulfilling the "let me not be" part of her letter. But without a body, without a car, without a single shred of physical evidence, the door to the impossible remains open. Did she start over? Did she change her name, dye her hair, and live out the rest of her days as a waitress in a diner in Kansas or a librarian in Oregon, finally free from the expectations of her past? It is a romantic notion, but one that her fans cling to. The tragedy of Connie Converse is that her disappearance is what finally gave her the fame she craved. In the 2000s, her recordings were rediscovered. An album was released. The world finally heard her voice, and she was hailed as a lost genius. Critics compared her to the greats, but she wasn't there to hear the applause. She had been gone for 30 years. This case taps into a deep existential fantasy that many people have felt: the desire to just pack a bag and leave everything behind. Do you believe Connie successfully reinvented herself and lived a secret second life? Or did she drive into the dark to end her pain on her own terms? I want to hear your theory on this poetic tragedy in the comments below. Connie Converse is the patron saint of the lost. Her music is now beloved, her lyrics studied, but her fate is a blank page. She proved that you can be ahead of your time, but if the world doesn't catch up fast enough, the silence can consume you. She is the woman who wrote the songs that everyone sings, but no one knows where the singer went. If this eerie story of the woman who sang her own fate captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for part 6, where we will head to the American desert to find a Woodstock star who vanished into the heat without a trace.
Number 6. Licorice Mckechne. We move now from the lush forests of the east to the sun-bleached, unforgiving expanse of the Arizona desert, following the fading footprints of a woman who was once the living embodiment of the 1960s counterculture dream. Her name was Christina Mckechne, but to the world and to the legions of fans who adored her ethereal voice and mystical presence, she was simply Licorice. She was a singer and songwriter for the Incredible String Band, a Scottish psychedelic folk group that was not just a band, but a phenomenon. They were favorites of the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and in 1969 they stood on the most famous stage in history at Woodstock, performing for 500,000 people. Licorice was the spirit of the group, a woman with a voice like wind through the trees, living a life of music, poetry, and freedom. But as the 1960s turned into the 70s and the hippie dream began to curdle into disillusionment, Licorice's life took a turn toward the obscure and the dangerous. This is the haunting story of a woman who walked away from fame, walked into the desert, and simply dissolved into the heat, leaving behind a mystery that has baffled music historians and family members for nearly 4 decades. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. To understand the vanishing of Licorice Mckechne, you have to understand the fragmentation of her world. After the Incredible String Band broke up in 1974, the members drifted apart. Licorice moved to California and eventually married Brian Lambert, another musician. But there was a third wheel in their relationship, the Church of Scientology. Both were deeply involved, and as Licorice struggled with health issues and the fading of her musical career, the organization became a central part of her existence. By the mid-1980s, her marriage had ended and she had left the church, or perhaps drifted away from it. She was living a transient life, moving between California and Arizona, reportedly struggling with bronchial issues and the emotional fallout of a life that had peaked so early.
In 1987, she was living in Sacramento, but she had a restless spirit. She told her family she was going to the desert. She loved the heat. She felt it healed her lungs. She was last seen hitchhiking or perhaps walking alone near the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, a place of breathtaking beauty and legendary danger, known for swallowing prospectors and wanderers whole. And then silence. The letters stopped, the phone calls ceased. Licorice Mckechne simply walked off the edge of the world. The investigation into her disappearance was almost non-existent at the time. She was an adult, a free spirit, and in the pre-internet age, it was easy for someone to just slip through the cracks. Her family and Scotland hired private investigators, but the trail was cold before they even started. There were no credit card trails, no flight manifests, no sightings. It was as if the desert itself had conspired to hide her. For decades, she was presumed dead, another casualty of the harsh American landscape. But the mystery of Licorice Mckechne refuses to stay buried. In 2019, a bizarre ripple went through the fan community. A post appeared on a Facebook group dedicated to the band, claiming to be from a woman who knew Licorice. The post claimed that Licorice was alive, living in California under a different name, and simply wanted to be left alone. It sent shockwaves through the fan base. Was it a hoax? Was it wishful thinking? Or had the Woodstock star successfully engineered her own erasure, living a quiet, anonymous life while the world mourned her? The post was never verified, and no proof of life was ever offered, leaving the mystery deeper than before. This case touches on the dark side of the hippie dream, the idea that total freedom can lead to total oblivion. Do you believe Licorice perished in the Arizona desert, a tragic accident of nature? Or do you believe the rumors that she is still out there, an old woman hiding from her own fame? I want to hear your theory on this enduring enigma in the comments below. Licorice Mckechne remains a ghost of the 1960s. Her voice is still captured on vinyl, young and full of hope, but her fate is a question mark etched into the sand. She proved that you can play Woodstock, you can be loved by millions, and you can still disappear so completely that not even a memory remains. She is the lost flower child, the singer who went looking for the sun and never came back. If this eerie story of the Woodstock star who vanished into the heat captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 7, where we will travel to the world of 90s rock science to uncover the story of the Iron Butterfly bassist who vanished after making a terrifying 911 call.
Number 7. Philip Taylor Kramer. We leave the deserts and oceans behind to enter a mystery that feels less like a rock and roll tragedy and more like a science fiction thriller. A story that combines heavy metal, rocket science, and a mathematical equation that some believe was worth killing for. This is the baffling disappearance of Philip Taylor Kramer, a man who lived two entirely different lives, both of them extraordinary. To music fans, he was the bassist for Iron Butterfly, the psychedelic rock legends famous for the epic anthem In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. He joined the band in the 1970s, living the high life of touring and recording. But Philip Taylor Kramer was not just a musician. He was a certified genius, a prodigy who eventually put down his bass guitar to pick up a calculator. He went back to school and earned a degree in aerospace engineering, transitioning from rock stages to the top-secret laboratories of the defense industry. He worked on the guidance systems for the MX missile, he pioneered fractal compression technology, and he was reportedly working on a revolutionary equation that could unlock the secrets of faster-than-light communication and gravity. He was a man with the soul of an artist and the mind of a quantum physicist. But on a February day in 1995, both the musician and the scientist vanished into a void that logic could not explain.
We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. The timeline of his disappearance reads like the opening scene of a conspiracy movie. On February 12, 1995, Philip Taylor Kramer drove to Los Angeles International Airport to pick up a business associate and a potential investor for his new technology company, Total Multimedia. He was stressed, working long hours, and deeply embroiled in the high-stakes world of tech startups. But his family reported that he was optimistic, on the verge of a breakthrough that would change the world. He arrived at the airport, but the investor never showed up. Kramer spent 45 minutes waiting at the terminal, a window of time that remains a black hole in the investigation. What happened next is a sequence of frantic, terrifying phone calls that suggest a mind rapidly unraveling, or perhaps a man under extreme duress. He called his wife, Jennifer, and told her there had been a change of plans. He called his business partner and left a cryptic, rambling voicemail. And then he made the final call. At 11:59 a.m., he dialed 911. The recording of that call is one of the most chilling pieces of audio in celebrity history. Kramer's voice is calm, almost robotic. He identifies himself clearly. "This is Philip Taylor Kramer." And then he says, "I am going to kill myself." Before the dispatcher could even ask where he was or what was wrong, the line went dead. It was a confession, a suicide note delivered to the emergency services. But to his family, it made no sense. Philip was not suicidal. He was a father, a husband, a brilliant scientist on the cusp of success. His father, a professor, immediately suspected foul play. He believed that Philip's work on the theory of everything, a mathematical equation involving biological transmutations, had attracted the wrong kind of attention. Theories exploded. Had he been kidnapped by a rival tech firm? Had the government silenced him because his research was too dangerous? Or had the sheer pressure of his genius caused a psychotic break that led him to drive into oblivion? For 4 long years, Philip Taylor Kramer was a ghost. His family searched tirelessly, appearing on talk shows, hiring investigators, and refusing to accept the suicide narrative. He was the rocket scientist rock star who had simply equationed himself out of existence. The answer, when it finally came, was tragic and provided more questions than closure. On May 29, 1999, photographers hiking in the Santa Monica Mountains, looking for old car wrecks to shoot, stumbled upon a ravine deep in Decker Canyon. At the bottom, hidden for 4 years of brush and overgrowth, was the twisted wreckage of a Ford Aerostar minivan. Inside were skeletal remains. Dental records confirmed it was Philip Taylor Kramer. The investigation concluded that he had driven off the cliff, plummeting hundreds of feet to his death. The authorities ruled it a probable suicide based on the 911 call. But the location of the crash, miles away from the airport in the opposite direction of his home, fueled the conspiracy theories. How did he get there? Why did he choose that spot? And what happened to his research? The breakthrough he was working on was never found, leading many to believe that the secrets of the universe died with him in that canyon. This case sits at the intersection of mental health and high-stakes conspiracy. Do you believe the official story that the pressure broke his mind and led to a tragic suicide? Or do you subscribe to the theory that his scientific knowledge made him a target for elimination? I want to hear your theory on this scientific mystery in the comments below. Philip Taylor Kramer is remembered as a man who lived 2 lifetimes in one. He played the heavy riffs of Iron Butterfly and wrote to code for the future, but his final act remains a cipher that no one has been able to decode. He vanished into the canyon, taking his music and his math with him, leaving behind a silence that is heavier than any song he ever played.
If this eerie story of the rock star scientist who vanished after a 911 call captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 8, where we will travel to New Orleans to uncover the disappearance of a pop star's daughter who vanished into the Mississippi River.
Number 8. Yellenia Caresi. We move from the cliffs of California to the gothic, humidity-soaked streets of the French Quarter in New Orleans, entering a mystery that bridges the gap between European royalty and American grit. This is not just a story of a missing person, it is the story of a missing princess of pop culture. Yellenia Caresi was not an anonymous backpacker. In her home country of Italy, she was a household name, the eldest daughter of Albano and Romina Power, a husband and wife singing duo who were essentially the Italian equivalent of Sonny and Cher. Yellenia was beautiful, intelligent, and famous from birth, a TV personality who turned letters on the Italian version of Wheel of Fortune. She had the world at her feet, but she rejected the glitz of her parents' lifestyle to seek something deeper, something grittier. She wanted to be a writer, a traveler, a solo spirit. But her journey of self-discovery led her into the darkest corners of the American South, where she vanished into the muddy waters of the Mississippi, leaving behind a broken family and a mystery that has endured for 3 decades. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to our channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. To understand the disappearance of Yellenia Caresi, you have to understand her state of mind in 1994. She had taken a break from her studies in London to travel solo through Central and North America. She was drawn to New Orleans, a city of magic, music, and shadows. She wasn't staying in a luxury hotel befitting her status. She was staying at the Lee Dale Hotel, a cheap, rundown establishment frequented by drifters and street musicians. It was there that she fell under the influence of a man named Alexander Masekela, a street musician and self-styled guru who was 20 years her senior. Masekela was a charismatic but dark figure, a man with a history of drug use and sexual violence allegations. Yellenia's parents were terrified of him. They believed he was manipulating their daughter, drugging her and controlling her mind. Albano famously called him a master of manipulation. Yellenia, however, was entranced. She referred to him as her master, a chilling choice of words that suggests a deep psychological hold. On January 6, 1994, Yellenia was seen in the hotel. She left her personal belongings, her passport, her clothes, and her camera behind in the room she shared with Masekela. She walked out into the neon-lit night of the French Quarter and simply never came back. The investigation into her disappearance was initially slow, hampered by Masekela's evasiveness. He didn't report her missing. When police finally questioned him, he claimed he didn't know where she was, yet he had tried to use her traveler's checks to pay for the hotel room. He was arrested, but eventually released due to a lack of physical evidence linking him to a crime. The trail seemed cold until a security guard stepped forward, with a story that was as poetic as it was tragic. Albert Cordova, a guard at the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas, reported seeing a young woman matching Yellenia's description sitting on the wharf by the Mississippi River late on the night of January 6th. The area was restricted. When he approached her and told her she couldn't be there, she looked at him with a strange, serene calmness. According to Cordova, she uttered a final, haunting sentence: "I belong to the water." She then dove into the Mississippi River. The river is treacherous, filled with undertows and currents strong enough to crush a barge. Cordova watched in horror as she began to swim confidently toward the middle of the river. But then, a barge passed by. The wake from the massive vessel created a vortex. The woman struggled, screamed for help once, and then was pulled under the dark, churning water. She never resurfaced.
The Coast Guard searched the river for days, but the Mississippi rarely gives up its dead. No body was ever found. This lack of physical confirmation split the Caresi family apart. Albano, her father, accepted the security guard's testimony. He believed his daughter, perhaps under the influence of drugs provided by Mckechne, had drowned. He declared her dead in 2013. But Romina Power, her mother, refused to accept it. She believed the drowning was a mistake, or perhaps a staged event. She believed Yellenia was still alive, perhaps held captive, perhaps living in a convent in Arizona, perhaps hiding from the fame she hated. The mystery took a gruesome turn years later when a serial killer, Keith Hunter Jesperson, known as the Happy Face Killer, claimed he had murdered a woman matching Yellenia's description in Florida. It was a terrifying possibility, but DNA tests on the victim eventually ruled Yellenia out. She was not the Happy Face Killer's victim. She remains the girl in the river, or the girl who ran away. This case tears a family apart to this day. It pits a father's acceptance of tragedy against a mother's undying hope. Do you believe the security guard's story of the woman who belonged to the water? Or do you think Yellenia used the river as a decoy to escape her life and the guru who controlled her? I want to hear your theory on this international mystery in the comments below. Yellenia Caresi is a ghost of the 90s, a reminder of the dangers of wandering too far from home in search of enlightenment. She traded her celebrity for anonymity, and in the process, she became one of the most enduring mysteries of the music world. If this eerie story of the pop princess who vanished into the Mississippi River captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 9, where we will head to the high seas to uncover the story of a German pop idol who vanished from a cruise ship.
Number 9. Daniel Kubalbook. We move from the humid riverbanks of New Orleans to the freezing black expanse of the North Atlantic Ocean to uncover a mystery that played out in one of the most isolated environments on Earth, a luxury cruise ship in the middle of the sea. This is the story of Daniel Kubalbook, a man who was, for a time, one of the most famous faces in Germany. He rose to fame in 2003 on the very first season of Deutschland sucht den Superstar, the German equivalent of American Idol. He wasn't the best singer, but he was a born entertainer, a flamboyant, eccentric, and polarizing figure who captured the nation's attention with his energy and his refusal to fit into a box. He was the clown prince of German pop, a reality TV staple who lived his life in the flashbulbs of the paparazzi. But by 2018, the laughter had faded, replaced by a private turmoil that would lead to a chilling final act on the deck of a ship bound for New York. We are investigating the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. These stories challenge us to accept the unknown and the unexplained. If you are fascinated by the mysteries that rock and roll left behind, subscribe to this channel right now to join our community. And if you feel for the families who are still waiting for answers, hit the like button to show your support. To understand the disappearance of Daniel Kubalbook, you have to look at the transformation he was undergoing in the months leading up to the voyage. In September 2018, Daniel boarded the Ida Luna cruise ship, traveling from Hamburg to New York. He was 33 years old, but he was no longer the goofy teenager Germany remembered. He was reportedly struggling with his identity and his mental health. Passengers and crew on the ship later reported bizarre and disturbing behavior. Daniel was seen wandering the decks alone, talking to himself, and seemingly in distress. He was transitioning, presenting himself as a female persona named Lana Kaiser, dressing in women's clothing and asking to be addressed as a woman. While this should have been a personal journey of self-discovery, witnesses described it as a frantic, unstable unraveling. There were reports of him screaming in his cabin, punching walls and setting off alarms. The ship's crew was concerned, moving him to a cabin closer to the bridge so they could monitor him, treating him more like a patient than a passenger. The atmosphere around him was heavy with a sense of impending doom, a man trapped on a floating city with nowhere to run from his own mind. On the early morning of September 9, 2018, approximately 100 nautical miles off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, the tragedy struck. The water temperature was a freezing 10 degrees Celsius, a temperature that induces hypothermia in minutes. At around 5 a.m., eyewitnesses reported seeing a person jump from the railing of Deck 5. It wasn't a fall, it was a deliberate leap into the abyss. The cry of "man overboard" rang out, triggering a massive emergency response. The ship stopped. The Canadian Coast Guard launched airplanes and helicopters. Other cruise ships in the area diverted to join the search. For a brief moment, the vast, empty Atlantic became a hive of activity, hunting for the pop star in the dark water. But the ocean is unforgiving. Despite days of searching, covering thousands of square miles, no trace of Daniel Kubalbook was ever found. He had vanished into the cold, dark waves, swallowed by the sea. The aftermath was a mix of grief and confusion. His father, Gunther, publicly criticized the ship's crew for not intervening sooner, arguing that his son was clearly in a psychotic state and should have been confined for his own safety. He painted a picture of a system that failed to protect a vulnerable celebrity from himself. The German public was left to wonder what had driven their sonny boy to such a dark end. Was it the bullying he had endured for years? Was it a mental health crisis triggered by his transition? Or was it a tragic accident born of a moment of confusion? In 2021, 3 years after he vanished, a German court officially declared him dead, closing the legal chapter but leaving the emotional wound wide open. This case highlights the unique isolation of fame and the ocean. Do you believe the cruise line had a responsibility to lock him in his room given his behavior, or is it impossible to stop someone who is determined to disappear? I want to hear your thoughts on this maritime tragedy in the comments below. Daniel Kubalbook is remembered today not just for the catchy pop songs and the TV appearances, but for the haunting final image of a lonely figure on a ship's deck, choosing the silence of the ocean over the noise of his life. He is the pop idol who became a ghost, a reminder that even on a ship with thousands of people, you can be completely alone. If this eerie story of the pop star who vanished at sea captivated you, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed for Part 10, the final and most legendary chapter, where we will travel to the war zones of Cambodia to find the rock and roll photographer who rode his motorcycle into oblivion.
Number 10. Shaun Flynn. We end our journey not in a recording studio or on a concert stage, but on a dust-choked highway in the middle of a war zone, following the tracks of a man who was the living embodiment of the rock and roll spirit, even if he held a camera instead of a guitar. This is the story of Shaun Flynn, the lost prince of Hollywood, the son of the legendary swashbuckler Errol Flynn, and a man who inspired a song by The Clash that immortalized his disappearance. Shaun Flynn was not content to live in his father's shadow or to play the game of Hollywood royalty. He was handsome, wealthy, and could have had a life of easy luxury, but he rejected it all for the adrenaline and the truth of the front lines. He became a photojournalist, a gonzo adventurer who waded into the thick of the Vietnam War with a camera around his neck and a grin on his face. He was the easy rider of the apocalypse, a figure who moved through the chaos of Southeast Asia with a fearless swagger that made him a legend among the soldiers and the correspondents. But on a humid April day in 1970, he pushed his luck 1 mile too far. He rode a motorcycle into the unknown and vanished into the heart of darkness, leaving behind a mystery that has haunted the counterculture for over 50 years. We have investigated the 10 most heartbreaking cases of music icons who vanished without a trace. If you have followed us through this history of loss, if you believe that the truth matters more than the myth, please subscribe to this channel right now. And if you appreciate the depth of this series, hit the like button to support the channel as we conclude this investigation. To understand the vanishing of Shaun Flynn, you have to understand the atmosphere of Cambodia in 1970. The war in Vietnam was spilling over the borders. The Khmer Rouge, a brutal communist regime, was rising in the jungles. It was a place of lawlessness and extreme danger. Shaun Flynn, along with his friend and fellow journalist Dana Stone, decided to go where others wouldn't. On April 6, 1970, they rented 2 red Honda motorcycles in Phnom Penh. They heard rumors of a checkpoint on Highway 1 that was controlled by the Viet Cong or the Khmer Rouge. Most journalists would turn back. Flynn and Stone, driven by the need to get the ultimate shot, the image that would define the conflict, decided to ride straight toward it. They were last seen riding those red bikes down the empty highway, disappearing into the shimmer of the heat haze. They never returned to the hotel. They never filed their photos. They simply rode off the edge of the known world. The disappearance of the movie star's son became global news. It was the rock and roll mystery of the war. His mother, actress Lily Demita, spent her entire fortune trying to find him. She hired mercenaries, private investigators, and local trackers. She funded expeditions into the jungle, desperate for a shred of proof that her son was alive. Rumors swirled for years. Some said he was being held captive in a tiger cage, forced to teach English to his captors. Others said he had been executed immediately. Some even whispered that he had gone native, crossing over to the other side to live a life of anonymity in the jungle, finally free of the Errol Flynn legacy. The mystery was so potent that Joe Strummer of The Clash wrote the song Shaun Flynn, asking, "Where are you now, Shaun Flynn?" It turned him from a photographer into a musical icon, a symbol of the lost generation who went looking for truth and found only oblivion. The grim reality, uncovered decades later through declassified documents and witness testimony, suggests a fate far more brutal than the romantic legends. It is now believed that Flynn and Stone were captured at the checkpoint by the Viet Cong and then handed over to the Khmer Rouge. They were likely held captive for up to a year, moved from village to village, treated as spies rather than journalists. The end came, according to reports, in 1971. A witness claimed that the movie star was executed by the Khmer Rouge in a remote camp. He was allegedly forced to dig his own grave before being beaten to death with hose. A brutal, silent end for a man who had lived so loudly. But his body was never found. In 2010, a team believed they had found his remains, but DNA testing proved them wrong. The jungle kept it secret. This case is the ultimate example of the live fast, die young ethos. Shaun Flynn traded a life of comfort for a life of consequence, and he paid the ultimate price. Do you believe he was foolish to ride down that highway, or was he a hero trying to show the world the truth of war? Was his disappearance a tragedy, or the only ending that fit his life? I want to hear your final thoughts on this legendary mystery in the comments below. Shaun Flynn remains the patron saint of war correspondents and rock and roll adventurers. He is the man who never came back, the face on the milk carton of the 1970s. His disappearance marked the end of an era of romantic war journalism and signaled the beginning of a darker, more cynical time. He rode his motorcycle into the mist and became a song, a story, and a ghost. This concludes our deep dive into the 10 music icons who vanished and were never found. We have traveled from the English Channel to the Arizona desert, from the Pacific Ocean to the jungles of Cambodia. We have seen that fame is no protection against the unknown. If this series opened your eyes to the hidden history of the music world, please hit the like button, share this video with every music fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed and have the bell turned on. We have a massive new investigation starting next week that digs into the dark secrets of Hollywood's biggest child stars.